So this is my strength. When people call me, I never ask them for, what is your credit score. I don't ask them numbers questions. I ask them, okay, tell me, what is that you want? Oh, I want a loan. Well, why? Oh, because I want to buy a house. Tell me more. Oh, well, this is my second house. Or this is a house for my daughter because she doesn't have, I'm worried that she's a waiter. This is a real example. She's a waiter. She doesn't have anything, and I want to help her buy a house. Okay, that immediately frames the whole conversation, frames all of the numbers, frames all of the formulas in a certain direction. If I start asking the formulas, I'm never going to get anywhere, and probably that person is never going to qualify. So I would say that my ability, I would not call it necessarily a superpower, but my ability is to extrapolate myself from all of the intricacies, not look at all of the specifics, just to have the macro view. And once I have the whole view of the person, then I start to channel them into the correct product, into the correct way, and that's how we get them qualified.
Heroes are an inspiring group of people. Every one of them, from the larger-than-life comic book heroes you see on the big silver screen, to everyday heroes that let us live the privileged lives we do. Every hero has a story to tell. From the doctor saving lives at your local hospital, to the war veteran down the street who risked his life for our freedom, to the police officers and the firefighters who risk their safety to ensure ours. Every hero is special and every story worth telling. But there is one class of heroes that I think is often ignored. The entrepreneur, the creator, the producer. The ones who look at the problems in this world and think to themselves, you know what, I can fix that. I can help people. I can make a difference. Then they go out and do exactly that by creating a new product or introducing a new service. Some go on to change the world. Others make a world of difference to their customers. Welcome to The Hero Show. Join us as we pull back the masks on the world's finest heropreneurs and learn the secrets to their powers, their success, and their influence, so you can use those secrets to attract more sales, make more money, and experience more freedom in your business. I'm your host, Richard Matthews, and we are on in 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome back to The Hero Show. My name is Richard Matthews, and today I have the pleasure of having on the line Alejandro Szita. Are you there?
Yes. Hi, Richard. Pleased to meet you.
Glad to have you here. And I know we were just talking before we got on, but you're coming in from California, right?
Yes, that is correct.
The land of the heavenly weather. Has it been nice out there? And you said it was Irvine, right?
It is Irvine. It's Southern California. It's very nice. It's very similar to the country where I come from, which is Chile. Where I used to live in Santiago, which is in the middle of the country, we have a very similar weather to Southern California.
Yeah, I was actually looking at Chile as a secondary passport for us, and the reason I was looking there is because apparently South America is like wine country, and it's supposed to be very similar to the coast of California.
Yeah, and you know why it's wine country?
I do not.
Because back in the 1880s or 1870s in France, there was a certain region of France that had like a plague, and the grapes were dying. They didn't know what to do. And some enterprising French people said, in order to save this, we need to take the grapes out of here. And they scoured the world at the time to find a region that was the same or nearly the same as that region in France where that particular grape was growing. And that region, or the place they found, was Chile, the Central Valley of Chile. So they saved some of the vines, they put them on a ship, they sailed all the way to Chile, and they planted them in Chile in that Central Valley. And that's why we have such good wine, because it's essentially French wine from the 1870s.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did not know that. I knew it was a wine country area, but I didn't know that story. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in the U.S. then?
25 years.
Long time. Almost.
Yes, a long time.
I say almost as long as me, but I was born here. So, and so for my audience who's been following my wife and I's travels around, we actually just hit our, we've seen all over 48 states, and we're on our way back to Florida now. And I mentioned before, we're working on moving onto a sailboat and traveling more there. But yeah, right now we're in Illinois. And the weather is not as nice here as in California. It's warm and humid. And that's my favorite part about California is there's like no humidity. So,
yeah.
What I want to do before we get too far into the interview is I just want to do a brief introduction for what you do, and then we'll just dive into your story. So Alejandro is the president of Prosperity Lending, which is a licensed real estate brokerage, and you're a mortgage outfit as well. You've been doing loans and real estate transactions in Southern California since 2005. So what I want you to start off our interview with is, why don't you tell me a little bit about what your business is, what it does, who you serve, and like what you do for them?
Yes, we serve the self-employed business people, the successful artists, and basically we serve people that don't fit very well within the lending standards that currently exist. If you go to a bank today, or if you go to a credit union and you want to apply for a mortgage, they try to put you into a certain system because that system fits about 95 to 96% of all the borrowers. If you work for a company, if you are like a W-2 employee, you will fit within that mold, and give or take, you'll have a few challenges here and there, but you will be able to get a mortgage. But if you deviate from that even a little, if you are a business owner, if you have income as a 1099, if you are a gig worker, if you are a successful artist, even if you are a successful business person, I know one of my clients, their business grosses $20 million a year. So this is not just for somebody that is like starting out. You could be a very well-established business owner, then most likely you won't fit into that pattern, and you won't really get what you're looking for, and you will have a lot of problems. And that's where we come in.
Yeah, that's amazing, because I know like my wife and I are looking at getting into some of the real estate investing stuff, and just because of my business, and I'm not a W-2 employee, though I'm working on changing that and actually getting myself to be a W-2 employee in my business so we don't have as many of those problems. But yeah, when we bought this RV, we had a tremendous amount of problems getting a loan because they were like, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it's not W-2 money, so it doesn't count.
Right. And they have a bunch of rules, about that, but in essence, yes.
Yeah. So there's all these things that go on. So you come in and you serve that community of people like myself who don't fit the mold.
I serve that community of people because I'm one of those people too. And I began my journey in the 90s when I wanted to buy a vehicle, and I have the money to buy it cash, but somebody said, you know what, you need credit, so go and buy it on credit. I thought, well, no big deal, And then it was such a nightmare to buy this vehicle. I thought it was the exception rather than the rule. But then over the years, I found out that if you are in business by yourself, this is going to be the rule. The rule, every time you apply for something, it's going to be a nightmare. So because I've always been interested in finances since the age of 7, I decided to make it my business, to help people like me, like you, and like anyone that finds themselves in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I want to find out then is, how did you get started doing this, right? Every good comic book hero has their origin story. It's the thing that made them into the hero they are today. And we want to hear that story. Were you born by a hero, or were you bit by a radioactive spider that made you want to get into real estate lending?
By any means.
A job? Essentially, just tell us how you got here.
I got here, I used to be in marketing. I had another business partner. We used to make infomercials. In the 90s, we had a lot of fun doing these things, these long 30-minute television commercials. And then one day, one of my television commercial clients said, hey, would you like to come to a financial seminar? And I said, yeah, I've always been interested in finances. That financial seminar basically led me to real estate. And I met this broker, the real estate broker, and he said, hey, you can do this. All you need to do is get a license, which at the time in my state, Southern California, you could get a real estate license and do loans. Now today, it's not like that anymore, like as easy as it was before. But before, you could get one license and do 2 things, real estate and mortgages. So that's what I did. And that's how I began in this business. That's how I began in the loan business, basically by a suggestion of one of my infomercial clients.
And so you got into the loan business in the 90s. And then how did you go from doing that to deciding who the niche that you serve, which is the entrepreneurs?
Basically by all the problems that I saw, helping people. I saw consistently that getting a mortgage, traditionally, it's a lot of work. Even if you're a W-2 employee, even if you fit all the boxes, it's a lot of work. People usually don't realize that. People usually think that once you apply for a mortgage, once you submit the basic information, and once you get an approval, you're done. And it's just the beginning. It's like getting married. You sign on the dotted line, your wife is beautiful, everything looks rosy, but that's the beginning. People don't understand or sometimes get dismayed by the amount of paperwork, the amount of questions. They think that everything is done just to find out that it's not. And this can happen 3/4 of the way on the process. You could be 3 weeks into this. You could have supplied a mountain of paperwork. You've gotten approvals all the way. You think you're done because you've disclosed everything. Pretty much everything about your life is in the hands of the lender. Just to not be the case. And this is very frustrating. So that's if you follow the normal guideline. That is if you fit in the mold, you know? Mm-hmm. Now, when you're a little bit away from that, forget it. I have so many stories about that. That is unbelievable. And it's not that there are no lenders that will not do your loan. It's not that we do anything, you know, like somebody else could not do. It's just the time that it takes. You know, most mortgage brokers, most loan officers don't want to spend the time that it takes because you don't get paid until the transaction closes. And there is no certainty when you get a business owner or when you get an independent person. At the beginning, there is no certainty that the loan is going to close. So very few people want to invest the time to nurture the person from, let's say, a 50-50 chance to a 100% chance. But we've done it so many times that we're not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of that. In all my career, I think there is only one loan I was not able to close. When I say not able to close, I mean not able to close within 2 months. That lady is going to qualify eventually next year, but that's pretty much the only one. Anyone that comes to me or comes to us, I know that there is a roadmap or a way that we can make them qualify. But to answer your story, I mean your question, my journey really began when I was 7. When I was 7, I used to draw these long contracts in a letter-sized paper, and I used to lend money to my friends, to my brother. You know, my grandmother had an old typewriter, you know, those very manual typewriters. So I just borrowed from her. I would just buy some paper. I would make these long contracts, you know, with collateral, interest rates, and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. Then I would lend the money, mostly to my brother who never paid, you know. He bankrupted my lending career. And then my first challenge is when my mom looked at these contracts and she went, how can you do this? How can you do this to your brother or to your friends? This is unfair. You know, you cannot charge these types of interest. So those were my first challenges.
That's funny. So you as a child, you were actually writing up legal contracts for lending? Trying to
giving it my best shot.
That's funny. And so when you get into actually doing mortgage lending here in the States, do you do that lending just in California, or do you actually work in multiple states now? Because I know people all over the country that have the same problem. Yeah. How wide is your net?
You know, we started with our state, which is Southern California, Northern California. We're licensed in Florida now, and now we have a program to get licensed in Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee.
Nice. So you're going to be doing mortgage lending in several states.
Yes, mainly in the South, because all of the forecasts that we've seen indicate that the South is going to be what we think of the United States. You know, I like that flag that you have in the back, and I'm pretty much for that flag. And this is not me. I mean, you can read this. This is all over the place. But people from several states are migrating to the southern states because the southern states are preserving our American values. So that, in my opinion, and from what I've read, is going to be the future. So we're getting licensed over there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so as you're going forward and expanding into those states, does that mean you have to expand your operation, or can you guys take your existing operation and just operate in those in multiple states?
You know, the mortgage business is not the way it used to be before. It's very fragmented from a physical point of view because thanks to the internet, your processor doesn't have to be in the office. It's usually away. You know, now you have so many systems that are cloud-based that you don't have to have a big frame, a big server at your office. You don't have to have a dedicated IT staff. So pretty much you can run a mortgage operation sort of virtually in a way. There are some states that require you to have a physical presence. But most states now, like the ones that I've mentioned, they don't require you to have a physical presence. So to be honest, Even though here I'm in Southern California, I can do a Florida loan as if I was right there. We are planning eventually of moving our head office to Florida because that's really where the action it is now. And we foresee that the action is going to be there in the future. So we are planning, this is not a project that is going to happen now. Probably it's going to happen in a couple of years from now. We're planning on moving our headquarters to Florida.
That's really interesting. So you can, the mortgage business is becoming more and more virtual then, where you can actually operate in multiple states and serve a larger audience there, which I think is really powerful for the type of mortgage lending you're doing, because you have a very specific niche that you're serving.
Yeah, and then the other advantage of that is the overhead. I mean, the overhead is still a lot, but a lot less than what it used to be before, you know? So that translates also to the advantage of the borrower because the costs are down as well.
Yeah. So I guess one of my other questions I have just on the mortgage lending process is, do you have to have access to different or a wider array of products because of who you serve, that rather than like a traditional mortgage lender who's serving W-2 employees?
Yes. We have to have several lenders, and each one specializes on a slightly different aspect of the transaction. You know, for example, if you are a self-employed borrower, but if you are sort of high-end, and in the sense that what you're going to buy is in the millions of dollars, we have a lender specifically for that. They are awesome. If you're high-end, if you're high income, if you're a doctor, you know, if you are, like I was saying, a client, you know, his company makes $20 million or more, we have the lender for that. Now, if you're at the other end of the spectrum, where you're not going to buy a multi-million-dollar home, you're just going to buy a normal home, we have another lender for that as well. You know, if you have the classical W-2, or if you can fit into, because sometimes we have independent entrepreneurs that we look at their case, and even though they have been denied by other lenders, or even though they've walked another client that walked into a major bank and they said that he could only qualify for half, most of those people or most of those clients, all you have to do is just put a little bit more time, juggle their information a little bit, massage it here and there, and they would qualify in the traditional route. We always try to do that, because if we can qualify you with the traditional lender, you're going to save. You know, your rate is going to be about 1% lower in essence. You know, you're going to save in a bunch of other fees. So we always try to do that. And we work with one particular lender, a convention, what we call the conventional lender, who they have an awesome customer service. They are like, I think, number 6 in the nation. So they are not the biggest of the biggest, although they close about 1,000 loans a day. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, that's
per
amazing.
day. Yeah, per day. But they are amazing on their customer service. So we use them. So we have different people for different things. Now, business owners not only have a need for residences, like residential or investment. Sometimes they want to buy like a small retail property. Maybe they want to buy their own office. So we have another lender for that specializes on small balance commercial lending. So, this is part of my job. My job is not just to do the transaction, but my job is to scour, if I may say, the lending network and find those niche lenders that would do different aspects of what a self-employed individual might need.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And it's definitely, it makes you kind of a go-to indispensable person for someone who's looking to do the, you know, the kind of work that we might be doing to, you know, because if I'm hearing you correctly, as an entrepreneur, I could hire you to help close the loan on my house, or close the loan on the building for my company, or help get an investment property. And you have the skill set to sort of help in all those areas.
Correct. And I also can tell you all of the differences, and we present all the options. You know, one thing that always surprises people is 2 things. One, they cannot understand why, if we serve the affluent entrepreneur, how come they cannot get a loan? Because people equate, well, he has money, how come he cannot get a loan? But that is the point, you know, he has money and he cannot get a loan. So that's number 1. And the number 2 thing is, when you get a loan, most mortgage brokers will spit at you one interest rate, but that's his personal decision. Usually a person qualifies for 50, I'm talking now in the conventional scenario. Usually a person qualifies for like 50 rates, of which maybe 5 or 4 make any sense. But wouldn't it be nice if somebody were to tell you, these are the 4 or 5 you qualify for, and these are the advantages or disadvantages of each, rather than just throwing one at you. Yeah. And I get this all the time. People call me, he says, well, you know, I need to know my rate. And this is, in my opinion, this is the fault of this is the advertising, because most lenders will advertise, do your loan with me and your rate will be blah. But that is completely false. Even though there are rules about it, even though you have to do disclosures, and there is a bunch of regulations when you put an advertising, that is false. And I will tell you why. No one can quote you a rate unless they have your information, because the way it works is you put all of your information, your credit score, your income, where you're going to buy it, the zip code, and like 20 more variables into a computer. The computer, and this is not just my computer, everyone is the same. The computer has an algorithm. The algorithm takes these 20 variables and spits a range of rates for you. So there is no way that over the phone, just by listening to you, I can quote you a rate. But that's what people continuously try to do. So I always say, when I get asked those questions, I say, you know, I cannot quote you a rate. I can quote you a range of what I've seen on my last transactions. But until I have your information, I'm unable to really quote a rate for you.
Yeah.
And another thing is this. Usually, unless the rate is over 1% difference, it doesn't make a difference for most people. If you're going to buy a $300,000, a $400,000, a $500,000, or even a $700,000 or $1 million home, the difference of 1% between a difference of 1% is really not going to be that material. It has to go beyond 1%. So that's why when people call me to refinance, if I cannot get them a 1% or more, I advise them not to refinance.
Yeah, because it wouldn't make any sense.
Exactly, unless you have a $7 million home. But guess what? The guy that has a $7 million home, the 1%, even though it's a material difference in terms of rate, to him, monetarily, is not that of a material difference anyhow.
Yeah, it doesn't make much of a difference because he's got a much higher net worth. So it's, as a percentage, it's a smaller.
Exactly.
Piece. So I want to talk a little bit about your superpowers then, right? You know, every iconic hero has a superpower, whether that's fancy flying suit made by their genius intellect or the ability to call down thunder from the sky. In the real world, heroes have what I call a zone of genius, which is either a skill or a set of skills that you were born with or you developed over the course of your career that really help you slay the villains, so to speak, in your clients' life and come out on top in their journeys. And the way I like to frame this for my guests is, if you look at all the skills that you've developed over the course of your career, there's probably a common thread that sort of ties them all together. And that common thread is where your superpower is. So with that framing, what do you think your superpower is in your lending and mortgage business?
Well, you know, it's very difficult for me to tell you what my superpower is. You should ask my wife, but there is one thing that I can see. And there is one thing that I think helps people, which is this. The mortgage industry is extremely fragmented and extremely specific. If you talk to a loan officer, if you talk to a mortgage lender, he's going to talk to you in acronyms. He's going to talk to you in numbers. He's going to always want to go to specifically the specific program, the specific loan, the specific payment. And you cannot almost, I never met anyone that you have to junk them out. You have to junk them out of that paradigm, you know? And when I talk to my staff, I always say the same thing. You have to start from the big and go to the small. You have to begin from the overview, from the macro view, and then go to the specific, not to begin at the specifics, because you're not going to get nowhere. Like, I had these discussions all the time. Oh, he doesn't qualify because his DTI is blah. That DTI means debt to income ratio. And I go, well, but why are you looking at the debt to income ratio? How does he make his money? How long is he been at his job? People in this industry it's very difficult for them to extrapolate and look at the whole vision at once rather than specific. So this is my strength. You know, when people call me, I never ask them for, you know, what is your credit score? I don't ask them numbers questions. I ask them, okay, tell me, what is that you want? Oh, I want a loan. Well, why? Oh, because I want to buy a house. Tell me more. oh, well, this is, this is my second house, or this is a house for my daughter because she doesn't have, I'm worried that she's a waiter. This is a real example. She's a waiter. She doesn't have anything, and I want to help her buy a house. Okay. That immediately frames the whole conversation, frames all of the numbers, frames all of the formulas in a certain direction. If I start asking the formulas, I'm never going to get anywhere, and probably that person is never going to qualify. So I would say that my ability, I would not call it necessarily a superpower, but my ability is to extrapolate myself from all of the intricacies, not look at all of the specifics, just to have the macro view. And once I have the whole view of the person, then I start to channel them into the correct product, into the correct way, and that's how we get them qualified.
Yeah, so if I'm hearing you correctly, the sort of the standard way people do this is someone comes and says, I want to get a loan, and they just immediately go to, what's your credit score, what's your income, what's your whatever the things are, without actually finding the story, right? Because I would imagine the big picture story of I want to buy a house for my daughter versus I want to buy a house for myself, or maybe I want to buy an investment property, are like, those are all, it changes everything.
It changes everything. If you call a mortgage broker, if you call any loan person, the first thing is they're going to do is, okay, sign this paper so I can run your credit report, send me your W-2, send me your tax return. But that honestly, I mean, many people are not going to agree with me, and I'm going to get a lot of hate mail, but that is really irrelevant to me. Why is irrelevant? Because even if you see your tax return, that doesn't mean anything. That's what you declare to the government that you make. Is that how much money you make? Maybe yes, maybe not. Is that your only source of income? Maybe yes, maybe not. Does it mean that you're going to make the same this year? Maybe yes, maybe not. So those pieces of paper, yes, they may be needed later, once you have the whole story first. And once you know exactly where those things exactly fit in. But if you only get that to begin with, and you try to build a story, you're not going to get the picture. And believe it or not, this sounds obvious. This sounds, I'm saying these things to you, and people will be listening and saying, well, how can it be any other way? But believe it or not, this is never done. That's why people get rejected. That's why people are not qualified. That's why people don't get what they want. And you may think, but it cannot be, but it is. And it's not just today. This has been going on for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. The only time when this was not going on was in the 70s or earlier, when you could go to the bank, the guy knew you, he knew where you worked, he had all of the numbers on your account because he had your numbers at your fingertips. You would say, hey, Joe, I want to buy a house. You didn't have to say more because he already knew you. He already knew your parents probably. He already knew where you work. He already knew how you made. And he would probably say, yeah, but you want to buy this house, but you have this bill here that I've been seeing, that was a different type of relationship. That was relationship banking that is dead, and it's been dead, unfortunately, for many, many years. I got to experience that in Chile when I was growing up. I had relationship banking for my small account, but that doesn't exist anymore unless you have $10 million or more. Then you have relationship banking. They did away with relationship banking so they could serve more people. So now the automated systems that exist, yes, they can serve pretty much 95% of everyone. And yes, now you can get a loan for less than before because you don't have to pay a guy that knows about you. So in a way, it's good for the majority, but it's bad for all of us who don't fit the mold, because now we don't have a chance. If we don't fit the mold, if we don't fit the box, nobody's going to listen to you because it's not worth it to them. Why? Because for everyone that they have to spend 1 or 2 months working with, they can do 10 other loans.
Yeah, and it just makes them more money to do the high volume rubber stamp loans rather than the ones that require some customization and effort.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. So the superpower is really being able to see the bigger picture and see how the story helps them find the right product.
Yeah, and sometimes that gets me into a lot of trouble because sometimes that makes me have very politically incorrect opinions, because you can imagine that this ability doesn't only go into the world of loans. It becomes a habit, and now you apply this everywhere, and now it lands you into a lot of trouble because now you're seeing the big picture, and now you may not agree with the majority, and that becomes sometimes a problem.
Yep, that is accurate. I feel you there. I have a similar take in, like, we run a marketing agency, And I always tell people, I was like, we do a specific thing in marketing. We work with podcasters and we help them run their podcast thing. But I always tell them like a podcast is just a small part of a much bigger picture. And I'm like, so you have to have, there's like at least 7 things that you should have lined up sort of ahead of time. And so I'll tell people like, either you need to like hire us or hire someone to get these things in order before you come and do this. Because otherwise, if you do this without all these things in order, it doesn't really make sense. Right. And it's not going to help you. So it's definitely a big picture sort of skill to pull out and look at it, like, how does this thing that we offer fit into the larger picture of your business? So I get it.
Yes. Yes. So it's good for one thing and it's bad for others.
Yeah. Because then it ends up you saying no to people who like otherwise want to pay you money, right?
Correct. In the world of loans, I think this is good because it allows me to serve the people that I like. They're in the sense I've seen myself in them, you know? So that's good for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to talk then about the flip side of your superpower, right? So if your superpower is the ability to see the bigger picture, there's always the other side of that coin, which is the fatal flaw. And just like Superman has his kryptonite or Wonder Woman has her bracelets of victory she can't remove without going mad, you probably had a flaw that's held you back in growing your business, right?
Yes.
For me, it was a couple of things. I struggled with perfectionism for a long time, kept me from shipping product. I also struggled with self-care, which means I let my clients sort of walk all over me, didn't have good relationships with, time boundaries and like communication boundaries and whatnot. I learned to fix a lot of those things over the years, but I think more important than what the flaw is how have you worked to overcome it so that our audience might learn a little from your experience?
In that sense, my fatal flaw was wanting to do everything myself because nobody could do it any better than me. That's a fatal flaw because there is only so much you can do. That's one of them. My other fatal flaw was to try to make others view reality like me. That's another fatal flaw because it's never going to happen. And it doesn't have to happen. And moreover, and this is part of my journey, it's okay that people have a different reality and a different point of view, that. So what I'm doing now, I'm much more patient than before. And what I'm doing now, I give complete freedom to the people that work with me. And I only say, look, this is what we need to achieve. We're a team. We're working together. This is what we have to achieve. You can get here any way you want. There are certain things you can do because in our industry we are regulated, very regulated, and there are certain no-nos that you must never do. So as long as you don't do these things, just get the product, get to the end of the line, however you want, And I'm much more open about that, and I don't do myself. For instance, now I'm trying to close a loan, which is really complicated. It's really complicated, not because there is an issue with money, not because there is an issue with collateral. It's simply because the way the person has arranged his or her life, it's so outside of the mold that it's being required. We were able to accommodate it and push it into a conventional frame to save her money. But the accommodation has been quite severe in the sense that everything we had to bend for the lender, you see?
Yeah.
And this loan is going on right now. We're supposed to close on Friday. I don't know if we're going to close on Friday, but I'm letting the team do the work. Yes, sometimes they call me and they say, hey, I run into this snag and I try to help, but I'm resisting temptation. I'm not putting my hands in it. They are trained. They don't know how to do it. I'm just letting them do it. And sometimes that's difficult, but I'm just hands off.
Yeah. That's I went through that in my business a number of years ago. And I remember I was at a mastermind group, and one of my mentors was like, hey, what you need to do is you need to hire someone and stop being the bottleneck in your business. And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, I can't do that. I have to do everything myself. And I thought about it for, 3 months before I took him up on it and realized that like, I really was my own worst enemy and bottlenecking my business that way.
Yeah. And another thing that it's a little bit of a weakness is that I'm come from Chile, but I sort of have like a Germanic background that everything I do has to be perfect and impeccable. So whenever I do something, I study everything I can about something. So maybe someone else, you say, do this, and it takes them, 2 days. Me, it takes me 2 weeks because I'm not just happy to do it or to find out how to do it. I want to know all the ins and outs, where it came from, what's the history, what happens if you do it this way, that way, what other people have done, How can you do it better? So I'm a little anal in that respect. And sometimes it's good, you know, when I'm dealing with a borrower that really has a situation that really needs to take a look at. But many times, like you said, you become your worst enemy because you are applying a level, a standard that is really not needed. And all it's doing is like making things slower.
Yeah. And it makes it more difficult to get things done. And sometimes you're like, the whole idea that done is better than perfect.
Yes, done is better than perfect.
Yeah,
for sure.
That's a hard pill to swallow for us perfectionists too.
Yeah. And then another thing is perfect is never there, because perfect is really like a curve. You know, you work towards perfection, but you never get there. But if you really try to get there no matter what, then you're going to lose out on so many other things in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I had my cure for perfectionism actually came from a friend of mine who just sat me down and she was like, here's the thing, perfection is the lowest standard you can hold yourself to because it's unachievable. And she was like, so if you want to achieve something, you have to set a realistic standard that you can actually hit, because you can't hit perfection. Therefore, you're holding yourself to no standard.
Yes. Yeah, she's very right.
So that was a helpful mind shift for me. And it definitely helped me move my business forward.
Yes.
So I want to shift gears a little bit then and talk about your common enemy. And every superhero has what we call an arch nemesis, right? It's a thing that they constantly have to fight against in their world, right? And in the world of business, it takes a lot of forms, but we like to put it in the context of your clients. And it's a mindset or it's a flaw that you always have to fight to overcome when they come to you, right? They sign on the dotted line, and if you had your magic wand and you could bop your clients on the head and not have to deal with this, what is that common enemy, that flaw, that mindset that you always have to overcome to help them get the results that they came to you for in the first place?
There are two mindsets. One, I think I overcame, although it took me a while, which is the client shares his life, shares his goals, shares his finances. And because you do this every day and you've been doing it for years and years, very quickly you figure out the ideal solution. But in about 50% of the cases, that's not what the client wants. What he or she wants to do is something that you think, you know what, he really should not be doing this. So my first lesson to overcome is like, if the client wants it, you give it to him. For example, the client wants a 15-year mortgage, and you know that he can make the payment, but it's not really in his best interest. Why? Because if you get a 30-year mortgage, you can still make the 15-year payment, and then if your cash flow dips down, you can make the 30-year payment and you're okay. If you have a 15-year loan, you can't do that. You have to make the high payment no matter what. So at the beginning, I was trying to, this is one example, but there are many others, you know, like impound accounts, including in the payment. You don't have to have them. They also increase your amount. You could have them removed, and so on and so on. So at the beginning, I was trying to convince people and I was antagonizing them. And then I realized, no, the guy wants a 15-year mortgage. I'll give it to him. He qualifies. He can make the payment. Fine. I'll give it to him. It's not something that I would recommend. And I may say a comment. I say, hey, you know, this is our option, but very light. And if they say, no, I really want this, I just go for that. So that was the first thing I had to overcome. Very difficult, by the way, but I did it. The other thing that still hits me in the face and I don't know how to overcome is the people that are the opposite of me. So instead of looking at the big picture, you only see the small picture. Usually you see this in people that work for a bureaucratic organization like the government, you know, or people that are like the regulators, where they say, okay, this T doesn't have a dot, or this I doesn't have a dot. And you go, yeah, but that's immaterial. Look at the big picture. No, the I doesn't have a dot. The T is not crossed. That is very difficult because they won't accept anything you say unless you speak in those terms. And that to me is my nemesis. You know, I'm very good at the broad picture and very bad at the specific.
So you have to have
that's why I hire a compliance officer.
Yeah,
because if somebody says, yeah, in this business you have to have it. Somebody says, well, you violated ECOA regulation B. I go, what? You know, I've been in this business for years. So, but I have to go look at my manual. I have to go and then I read it. Oh yeah, it means blah. But the guy that thinks like this, he's going to go, ECOA regulation B. And I'm going to go like, you know. I'm going to be like you. What the F is this? But if I read it, immediately I remember what it is and I can answer the question. But that is my nemesis, the people that think like that.
Yeah, the people who are super detail oriented.
Super detail and super like.
Yeah. And I found that myself as well, because I'm not the most detail oriented person. I have to have people on my team who are really good at the details, because I'm a big picture person, same as you, where I'm like, I want to get the big stuff done. And I'm like, I don't really care about all the T's and the I's and whatnot if they're dotted properly, as long as at the end of the day we accomplished our goal.
Yeah. Well, in this business, you have to care because it's part of the business, So I hire someone that does that. So he knows exactly what it is right away. Me, I have to look it up and remember, oh yeah, it means this, it means that.
Yeah. So I want to talk then about the flip side, right? So if your common enemy, your arch nemesis are those tiny details of people who are like that, the driving source is the flip side, right? It's what you fight for. So just like Spider-Man fights to save New York, or Batman fights to save Gotham, or Google fights to index and categorize all the world's information, what is it that you fight for at Prosperity Lending, your mission, so to speak?
I fight for my clients to look at the mortgage not as a bill, but as a financial instrument that they can mold to achieve their objective. Sometimes they don't want to do that. Sometimes they just want a rate, which it's a battle because I cannot give them the rate until they give me the information, But I would say this. I would say that we tend to attract the kind of client who is willing to work with us. I noticed that the client that treats us as an actual commodity, like, oh, well, you're one of the 3 or 4 we're calling, it never works because we cannot compete in those terms. Actually, we are a little bit more expensive because we take a long time and we do a lot of things that other brokers don't do. We charge a little bit more. It's not much, a little, but we charge more. So people that are just looking for pricing don't do well with us because that's not what we are about. But to answer your question, that's what we're trying to do. I'm trying to tell people, okay, I know that you came here for a mortgage, but there is more. There is more than you can do with this mortgage. This mortgage not only can achieve your goal of buying the home, but it can also achieve a financial goal if you do this and this and this and this and that. This could be your ticket to wealth, if you administer in a certain fashion. And like I said before, they say, you know what, Alejandro, that's cool. I really don't want to hear about that. I respect that decision. But most of the clients that we tend to attract are of the frame of mind if, I never thought about that. Tell me more about it.
Yeah, I'm like super curious now. I didn't know you could do any of those things. I always thought, like you just said, I've always looked at the mortgage business like a commodity business, where a loan is a loan is a loan. But what I'm hearing you say is that's not true.
It's not true at all. It's like going to the supermarket and you say, I want to buy an apple. And you call the supermarket and say, hey, what is the price for an apple? And the supermarket goes, well, it depends. You want a red apple? You want a green apple? You want an apple in New Zealand? You want a Gala apple? You want a Fiji apple? Now, what size you want it? You have small apples, we have big apples. And you go, you know what? Don't give me that crap. You're just trying to sell me. I just want to know how much is an apple. And you go, well, but we have 15 species of apples, and also depends how you buy them, because we have packages of 1 box, we have packages of 3 apples, or you can buy just 1 apple. Just tell me. And you go, no, don't give me all that crap. Just tell me how much is the apple. So you end up saying, well, you know what? You can buy apples from $1 to 10. 10? Are you kidding? Are you trying to rob me? Hey, but the 10 apple is this size. It comes in a big crate. You get blah, blah, blah. You see, that's really how the mortgage business is. And it's not just, in my opinion, it's the fault of advertising and it's the fault of regulation. Because regulation tries to protect the customer. But in trying to protect the customer, they have gone so much overboard that the thing now is a humongous, complicated monster. Just to go through the forms is an ordeal for many people. And this is all to help them, by the way. So it's become, in the effort of the regulator to standardize the mortgage has made it look like a commodity to most people, but it is not. It's like going to a supermarket that specializes only on apples, that has 100 varieties of apples, packed in many different ways, and asking how much is the price of an apple.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, that's something that I didn't know until today, right? It's because I've always thought they were I thought it was a commodity because that's the way it's presented to the
That's the
market.
way it's presented, but it's not like that at all. And
Yeah.
not only that, you could give all of your information. You could go through all the process, and then the Apple changes. Because if you don't do something like locking the rate, for example, now the Apple changes. It's not the Apple that you signed up for.
You're like, I bought a red apple and this one's green.
Yeah. And you have to be very careful because it's not just buying the apple. Yeah, we're going to buy the apple, but show us this, show us this, show us this, show us this, show us this.
Yeah, yeah. And you're buying an apple that you're going to be with for 30 years. So, you know,
Yeah.
you got to really like that kind of apple. So I want to talk about some practical things then, all right? I call this our hero's tool belt. Just like every superhero has awesome gadgets like batarangs or web slingers or laser eyes or, you know, a magical hammer they can spin around. I talk about the top 1 or 2 tools that you couldn't live without in your business. Could be anything from your notepad to your calendar, to something you use for your marketing, to something you use for your actual product delivery, something you think is essential to getting your job done on a day-to-day basis.
Well, because this business is very theoretical, I made some spreadsheets that I made it very simple and user-friendly and put colors in it. So those tools I created now have like 15 of those spreadsheets. By the way, most lenders have them, but they are designed by someone else and they're very complicated. So we made these spreadsheets that are usually over Zoom, like we're talking now. I share with people and I share my screen. And that's how we talk about the mortgage. You know, it's a completely interactive process. Instead of me saying, give me this, give me this, give me this, give me this, and then I spit out a rate of them, I go, no, let's talk. I put up the spreadsheet on the screen, we share, we have a talk and say, well, what kind of house you want? Oh, I want a house that is blah, blah, blah. We put it on the spreadsheet. What do you want to do with the house? And then through the conversation, we're building the loan together. So it's completely interactive. And then as I am building the spreadsheet, we get to the income, we get to the credit, and they see, the client sees right away how each of the different things impacts the loan and the amounts and everything. So by the time we're done, he knows how the loan works and why. And he already knows what I need to be supplied with and why I need it. So I would say, if I have to talk about tools, Zoom has been awesome. 2 years ago, I didn't even know what Zoom was. Somebody called me and says, let's do Zoom. And I said, what? Now I use it constantly. The Zoom, those tables that we made, you know, communication. I would say that the most important tool is a communication course that I did a long time ago when I was in my 20s that taught me really how to communicate to people. Without that, I could not even be talking to you right now. So I would say that was the foundation. Then the tables. The tables allow me to show people what it is that they are getting into and why.
Yeah, and when you were talking through like having the tables built, it reminded me, I just read a book called $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy, and he talks about building tools like that really set your business apart. And that's the kind of thing that changes the experience for someone who's buying from you, right? Yeah. Who's going through that. So, I mean, that's one of those standout sort of things that people are going to remember that because, you know, other mortgage lenders aren't doing things like that with them. They're
and it's all the data. And it's not that I'm a genius or anything. These tables are very simple. Anybody could do them. But like I said before, nobody wants to do them because they take time, especially at the beginning when you're crafting them. They can take 2-3 hours to make, you know, and then you have to make them simple. You know, it's like I was saying at the beginning, it's nothing special. It's just a combination of different things together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I like the idea of having tools like that really help push your business forward, help set you apart and change the experience for your customers. Because, you know, the experience is really what people are going to come back for, is what people are going to recommend you for their friends. Because they're going to be like, I learned more about mortgages just going through the process with him than I've ever learned before. Right. And that's definitely, it's a unique selling proposition for what you guys are doing.
Yeah. And another thing that we do, we disclose every single fee, every single penny, and we tell them where it goes. And you may think, well, isn't that part of the disclosure? Isn't that what everybody does? And the answer is no. When most people do, they'll shove the disclosure in your face because that's legally what they have to do. But nobody really goes through them exactly. This is something that always perplexes me. People in the mortgage industry are afraid to disclose to the client how much they make. They try to disguise it, you know, and everything is legal, but not because it's legal, it means that it's right. and not because it's legal, it means it's transparent. For some reason, mortgage people try to minimize how much they make. They try to make the mortgage appear as if it doesn't cost anything, which is very far from the truth. You know, they come with all these phrases like no points mortgage, which really do not exist between you and me, and so on and so on. So the other thing that we do is when we get to the forms are supposed to be easy, but we go line by line, number by number, explaining where each dollar is going and why. And when we come to our fee, we're not ashamed to say, this is how much we make. And almost no one says, oh my God, you make that much. How come? Because by the time we get there, there's so much work into it. Sometimes we get, oh, this is all that you make? Yeah, that is how much we make.
Yeah.
So we get the reverse. We get the reverse reaction.
I would imagine being a business owner, one of my, I refuse to work with businesses where I don't understand how they're making a profit.
Right.
Because if they're not making a profit, they're not going to be around long term to help support me. And I've been burned by things like that in the past. Like I remember I was about 10 years ago, a big company, they had this new product out and they were like, oh, this new product is awesome and it's wonderful and blah, blah, blah. And everyone should sign up for it. And I was like, I don't understand the profit model. You're not making money on this. So if I build all my business processes on it the way that you're telling us that we should and the way that they were marketing it, I was like, you're going to take it away because it's not making money that I can see. And it only lasted about 2 years before they were gone. And I was like, that terrifies me as a business owner, is putting my business on someone else's business. It's not profitable. So like, I want to see, like, you're going to show me your money, like how much you're getting paid. I'm like, is that good? Are you making a profit here? Can you pay your employees? Will you be here next week? Like that makes me happy.
And Richard, you're so right. My dad was a very successful businessman. And and I saw this many times, salespeople came to sell him things. And after the sales presentation, he said, you know, all of this is wonderful and that's great. And now I want to know how you make your money. Because if he did not understand how they made their money, then he didn't buy.
Yeah.
A bit like what you're saying now.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you don't understand how they're making money, they're not going to be there.
Yeah.
Right? Because it doesn't last. Profitability is what creates long-term businesses and long-term relationships.
And also, if you don't understand how they make their money, then the question is, how can they offer all of these things to me? What it is in it for them? Because there must be something in it for the salesperson. Otherwise, why is he even here talking to me?
Yeah, yeah. It's like those of us who are into capitalism, right? We understand it's a value for value exchange.
Yes. Oh, by the way, I just want to say free enterprise system, not capitalism. Capitalism was a world invented by Karl Marx to basically say that the free enterprise system was bad because it was ripping people off. That's the meaning behind capitalism. But that was a word invented by Karl Marx, who never worked in his life on a company, who never founded anything. He was just a journalist that went to a library. That's where all his theories come from. So it's free enterprise
stuff. Free enterprise, yes.
Free enterprise model.
Where value is exchanged equally between all parties.
Yes.
I love it.
And now, a quick word from our show's sponsor. Hey there, fellow podcaster. Having a weekly audio and video show on all the major online networks that builds your brand, creates fame, and drives sales for your business doesn't have to be hard. I know it feels that way because you've tried managing your show internally and realize how resource intensive it can be. You felt the pain of pouring 8 to 10 hours of work into just getting 1 hour of content published and promoted all over the place. You see the drain on your resources, but you do it anyways because you know how powerful it is. Heck, you've probably even tried some of those automated solutions and ended up with stuff that makes your brand look cheesy and cheap. That's not helping grow your business. Don't give up though. The struggle ends now. Introducing Push Button Podcasts, a done-for-you service that will help you get your show out every single week without you lifting a finger after you've pushed that stop record button. We handle everything else: uploading, editing, transcribing, writing, research, graphics, publication, and promotion, all done by real humans who know, understand, and care about your brand almost as much as you do. Empowered by our own proprietary technology, our team will let you get back to doing what you love while we handle the rest. Check us out at pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero for 10% off the lifetime of your service with us, and see the power of having an audio and video podcast growing and driving micro celebrity status and business in your niche without you having to lift more than a finger to push that stop record button. Again, that's pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero. See you there. And now, back to the Hero Show. So I want to talk then about your own personal heroes, right? Every hero has their mentors, just like Frodo had Gandalf, or Luke had Obi-Wan, or Robert Kiyosaki his rich dad, or even Spider-Man had his Uncle Ben.
Yes.
Who were some of your heroes? Were they
I have,
real-life mentors, speakers,
yes,
or authors?
I have
Maybe
many. I have many heroes.
tell
One
us
of my,
about them.
okay, one of my heroes is my mentor, my real estate mentor, who I worked for him as a slave for 10 years. For 10 years, I did everything he said he asked me to do, all the dirty work. And he gave me the privilege to sit in front of him when he made every single phone call and every single deal. And I got to help him in deals that he was already making in progress. He was very generous. I even got married at his house, and forever I will be grateful to him for the opportunity he gave me to learn so much from him. He was an exception to the rule. He's still in business and he's still operating. He's one of the most prominent real estate brokers on the west side of Los Angeles. And I didn't know at the time because I didn't know any better, but he is completely anal about what he does. And the way he works is like a cut above everyone else, which at the time I did not know. I only knew it when I ceased to work for him and I went out in the real world and saw how things were done. So he is one of my heroes. Another hero that I have many, but another hero that I have is Richard Branson, the British entrepreneur, Richard Branson. I read his book and I was very impressed. I was in particular impressed. And this, to me, it epitomizes the successful entrepreneur. He had an agreement he had to sign, He had an agreement that if he didn't sign, basically it was disaster for him. And if he signed it, he was going to go, to another level. And he missed the deadline. He didn't show up at the office of his lawyer at 5:00. The agreement was not signed. And that was it. He was done. He was pretty much done. And then he thought, hey, the attorneys, this is in London. The attorneys have an office in LA. In LA, it's not the end of the business day yet, isn't it? And then he signed it in LA and he was on time and he signed the agreement. I went, wow, what vision. What it takes to never accept defeat, even when you are quote unquote defeated. But that is the thread that you see in all of the entrepreneurs. My other hero of recently, I know that some of your listeners are not going to like this, is Mr. Trump. Because despite all the pressures, despite all the attacks, despite everything that is being thrown at him, regardless of whether he did something right or wrong, I'm just talking about him not as a political leader, but as an entrepreneur. Despite the gigantic opposition, he still comes on top of everything they throw at him. That is amazing. I've never seen this in my life. I've never read of an individual that has endured such level of persistent attacks from such a high level, and still he comes up the winner. That is historically, I think not even Napoleon was able to do that,
Yeah, it's been amazing to watch over the last, I don't know, what is it, 6 years now, him being attacked for everything and suing him for this and suing him for that and putting him in front of committees and just all sorts of stuff. And there's nothing sticks because he hasn't done anything wrong.
But it's not only that. You or me with a hundredth of that effort, we probably would cave in.
Yeah. So it's like a superhero of some sort almost.
Yeah, he's sort of almost like he has superhero powers.
Yep, that is very true. So I've got one more question for you here, and that is about your guiding principles, right? One of the things that makes heroes heroic is that they live by a code. For instance, yes. Batman never kills his enemies. He only ever brings them to Arkham Asylum. So as we wrap up the interview, I want to talk about the top one or maybe two principles that you use in your life, something that maybe you wish you had known when you first started out on your own entrepreneur's journey.
Yeah. I would say do only things that you believe in. Don't do things just for money. Do only things that you believe in. I knew that at the beginning, but at the beginning when you don't have any cash, you are tempted to just not follow that. But that is one of the guiding principles. When I take a client, I'm never think about the commission. I take the client when only I think that I can help him, and only I think that I can work together with him and we're going to have fun. Because I do this not just for the money. I do this because I have fun. To me, doing a mortgage, believe it or not, is really fun.
Yeah, and it's a challenge to figure out how to get the right type of thing working, right?
Yeah, and I want it to be fun for the client too, not just an ordeal that they have to endure, So being true to yourself, doing something because you believe in it, that's one of the guiding principles. Another guiding principle that I have is always disclose. As part of my license and as part of my background, I'm a realtor, although I don't buy or sell houses anymore. I used to be in commercial real estate. I used to work for a hedge fund management in capturing capitals. I don't do any of that anymore. I just do loans. But as a realtor, you are drilled on disclose, 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 meaning that anything that comes up, anything that could be even remotely misinterpreted by anyone, you don't wait, you disclose. A problem comes, you disclose it. So that's the second principle, disclose. Because usually when you disclose, even when there is a big problem and you disclose it, you find a solution. If you don't disclose it, then it starts to breed, bad
becomes
vibes.
its own monster.
Yeah. So be true to yourself, disclose, and have a vision of the result that you want to happen. Because believe it or not, we are spiritual beings in this material universe. Scientists in quantum physics have already demonstrated that when you look at a physical object, me or you or anyone, just by looking at a physical object, you are at a subatomic level changing it. So what you think really materializes, except that it takes longer, it takes all these molecules or whatever, it takes time to arrange themselves. So you have to keep putting, most people think, oh, well, I want $1 million. Doesn't materialize, so it doesn't work. No, it's not that it didn't work. You didn't really put enough attention. You didn't put enough mental energy, because the moment you think it's starting to happen, it's just you have to continue. So my guiding principles are this: see what you want to achieve, keep putting attention, disclose, have fun, and do things that you wholeheartedly believe in.
Yeah,
that's why I don't do well with corporations, because corporations try to kill all that.
That's accurate. Yeah, and I love those guiding principles too. I love particularly the have fun, do what you believe in, like that kind of stuff is, one of the reasons why I love being an entrepreneur as opposed to, and why I'm a terrible employee is for that particular reason, is that a lot of this particularly larger businesses, more bureaucratic businesses, it's not fun, right?
No, it's not fun.
And when it's not fun, it's you don't want to do it, right? And nobody likes being there, and it's not entertaining. And I don't know, I feel like we need more fun in general. Our whole world needs to have a little bit more fun with what they're doing. So I love that principle.
Yeah, and that's what we're here for. In my opinion, we're here to service others. So let's do it with fun.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So I think that's a great place to wrap our interview. But I do finish up every interview with a simple challenge that I call the Heroes Challenge. And I do this to help get access to stories I might not otherwise find on my own. So the question is simple. Do you have someone in your life or in your network that you think has a cool entrepreneurial story? Who are they? First names are fine. And why do you think they should come share their story with us here on the Hero Show? First person that comes to mind for you.
I think my processor team. They are in Alabama. They used to be in Southern California, in San Diego. And I think they should come to your show and share their story, because they do the hardest part of the loan, which is comply with all the nitty gritty, all of the regulation, put it all on the computer. That's a really, really detailed and hard job to do. And they still do it. They still do it with a smile. They still manage to comply with this barrage of regulation in a nice way and provide a nice experience to us, the broker, and to the client, the borrower.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it's not simple. It's not a simple job, and it has a lot of ups and downs, but they still manage to do it, and they manage to do it well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll reach out later and see what we can do about maybe setting something up. But in comic books, there's always the crowd of people at the end who are cheering and clapping for the acts of heroism. So as we close, our analogous to that
is where can my audience find you if they're looking to get a mortgage? Where can they light up the bat signal, so to speak, and say, oh, hey, Alejandro, I'm in that space. I need help with something. Where can they find you? And I think more importantly, who are the right types of people to reach out and ask for your help?
Anyone who is relatively successful. When I say relatively successful, it means that they are independent people, they are business owners, but they are over the hump in the sense now they can pay their bills, now they have a little bit of cash extra. They are on their way. They're on their way to success, because those people are the ones that are ignored. If you already made it, you have a line of financial professionals waiting for you. If you are just starting out, nobody cares about you. And if you are in the middle, nobody cares about you either. If you are sufficiently poor, you have mortgages for people that have less than 620 and so on and so on. But if you're in the middle, if you are relatively successful, there is no really anyone is going to want you to adapt to a certain mold. So if you're relatively successful, business owner, entrepreneur, you're on your way up, you can just send me an email at info@prosperity, like something prosperous, prosperitylending.us. Our website is the same, is www.prosperitylending.us. But the best is send me an email. This is something that I learned from reading biographies of successful people. Successful people are always available. It's the secretaries and it's the other people that try to stop you to get to them. But if you manage to get to them, they are like quite nice people that are like no problem in talking to you. So I always try to do that. info@prosperitylending.us. That's the best way.
Awesome. Thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story with us today, Alejandro. We'll make sure that the links to your website and the email address are with the show notes. If you are listening and you're looking for a mortgage, definitely take the time to reach out to Alejandro. Obviously, he knows his stuff and he is serving our industry specifically, which is very cool. So again, thank you very much for your time on the interview today. And did you have any final words of wisdom before I hit this stop record button?
Richard, thank you very much for giving me a voice to your audience. I'm very honored by that.
Awesome. Thank you for being here.